Gerry Grieve agus fáilte romh chuig Q&A and léon jobh. So, welcome to today's Q&A. And I'm Siobhán, or Siobhán, whichever you want to call me. And it's just me this evening now, since Owen couldn't make it. But I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. And I'll go through some of the questions I've been sent in, that have been sent in to me in the past few days. And of course, you're welcome as well to write in your questions in the comment box on YouTube. All right, so we had a lovely few questions here. So the first was from Karen in Vermont. Karen. Thank you. So Karen, you sent in 3 questions, and that's great. So the first one was, I've noticed that there are several words for 0 in Irish. Náid, Nevni, and Nílas. And Karen asked, are these regional dialect variations? So, Náid, I would say, would be the most common. And that would be, I would venture to say, mostly Connacht, but it's common everywhere. It's the most common word for 0. Nevni is mostly Ulster. Very common if you're listening to an Ulster speaker to hear Nevni for 0. Now, Nílas isn't as common at all. It's there. If you look it up in the dictionary, if you look up 0 in the dictionary, you'll find Nílas, but it's not used as commonly at all. So, Náid and Nevni are certainly the most common words for 0 in Irish. So that was a great question, Karen. So now we'll move on to your next question. Is Irish always pronounced with the T sound at the end, or does this vary by region? So I suppose you're referring there to Arisht, as opposed to Irish. So usually you'll find Irish if you're reading a book or an article, you'll see Irish, which means again. And I'll just write that up now so that you'll see what I mean. So this is Irish, and this is Arisht. So sometimes you'll see it written as well, with the T at the end. So Irish and Arisht. Now, the question, where's it from? Where do people say Arisht? So Arisht is the form you'll hear from those who have a Cuisharga dialect. So where's Cuisharga? Cuisharga is in Connemara, in Gaeilge, County Galway. You might recognise these towns and villages now from Cuisharga. Barna, na Forbacha, and Spidgel, Indraván, and Tullach, agus Rossville. So you've probably heard of at least one of those. So those, they would be classed as being in the Cuisharga area. Now, Cuisharga means by the sea, because if you look at the map, it's certainly by the sea. So that's it. So Arisht, you'll hear that a lot from people from that area, or people who learned Irish in that area, or whatever. So that's where Arisht is usually heard. And let's see, now you had another question there, Karen. Yes, so the V at the end of inniu, or inniu, as you're saying there. So let's show that one now. So we've got inniu, and it's sometimes pronounced inniu or inniu. Now you might I guess a lot of you will already know what this word means. It's the Irish for today. So inniu, inniu, or inniuv. Now, Karen would like to know why is the V there, or when does that happen? So inniuv is usually how it's pronounced in the Munster dialect, or at least you'll find it in the Munster dialect. Some people, of course, have a mixed dialect, so they might say arisht, but also say inniuv, because perhaps they lived in Quisharica for a while, and then, let's say, in Kerry or whatever. But it would mostly be tied to, broadly speaking, the Munster dialect. All right, so that's inniuv. And then the last one was bhean, but said with a H sound, so bhean. Now, that one, I'll just write that word up as well. So this means self. Basically, it can have more meanings, but its basic meaning would be self. So bhean, like in Sinn Féin. Of course, you usually hear Sinn Féin. But that being said, the word bhean, spoken in a sentence in Irish, it's probably more often than not pronounced as bhean. Now, why is that? It varies a lot. You'll often hear it from Connacht and Ulster speakers, but it's really something that you'll hear from Munster speakers as well. And as I said there, it's the most common. It's the most common, I would say, pronunciation of that word, not with an F, but with that H sound, bhean. So you'll hear that commonly enough. So you'll hear both bhean and bhean. So, all right, so then we have another question here. So this is, can you comment on the practical usage of the greeting duit or duit in modern Ireland? All right, so duit or duit, I used a version of that at the beginning of this Q&A. So I just write it up here so you can all see it. So duit is a common greeting in Irish. It could be like the standard greeting. You could think of it like that. Doesn't mean that that's the most common greeting used every day, but it's kind of like the standard. I guess it's similar to how hello is pretty much the standard in English. It literally means God to you, and it is, as I said, they're pretty much the staple greeting. Now, some people find issue with it. Some people find for religious reasons. Some people find issue with it because they feel it's too formal. But it's still a very common greeting. Very common. Some people just skip it and go straight ahead and ask, how are you, as the greeting. So that even happens in English in Ireland. People just say, how are you? It's not even, you're not even looking for a reply. It's more like hello, but it's just how are you. So it's the same in Irish. You might hear Céachúil chuna tátu, Céamar tátu as the greeting without anything before it. Now, some people use hi, some people use hello in Irish as well. And there are other versions, and we actually addressed that. I believe it was myself and Owen last time in the last Q&A. So you can find that on our YouTube channel here. You can go searching around and find that. You'll find that we went through the different variations that are possible to use to say hello in Irish and what's common today. But to get back to that, duit or duit, whichever pronunciation you like, is still common in modern Ireland. All right. Then the other question is, are there any terms of respect, such as the English use of the terms like ma'am and sir, that should be used when addressing a stranger or elder. So I would say that compared to a lot of other languages, European languages anyway, Irish in its common spoken form today doesn't use that many formalities. Like we no longer, it's centuries upon centuries since we had any form of like a formal you or anything. It's just today not so much. Like we have, of course, we certainly do have formal terms of respect, but they're not something that you would use as commonly as, let's say, ma'am and sir in, let's say, America or England. They're not even used that commonly in the English spoken in Ireland. It's just a cultural thing, I guess. So if you're writing a letter, you would use a dhuine uasail for sir. Now, would that be used in speech? It could be, of course, but how common would that be? Not that common. Depends again on the speaker and everything. But this is sir in Irish, usually found in written Irish. A dhuine uasail, which literally means noble person, or more like, oh, noble person, you're addressing the person. A dhuine uasail. And of course, there is the female version, like madam or mem. And that's often a bhean chóir. A bhean chóir. That would be a very common version of that. So dhuine uasail, very good for when you're writing your letters. And the other one would be a bhean chóir. I'll just write that up now. So a bhean chóir. So this is like mem or madam, a bhean chóir. Again, mostly used in writing these days. Of course, they can be used in speech, but you'll mostly see it in writing. What then do people use in speech if they don't know the person's name? What I've found is it's usually a chara. And if you get a letter from the government, let's say in Irish, it more usually than not will not be a dhuine uasail or a bhean chóir. It'll be a chara. So that's like the in its current form, the Irish version of dear sir, madam, that sort of thing. Like you get it, the dear sir / madam, that sort of thing. It's very similar to that. It means, as you might recognize, a chara means friend. A chara, friend. But this is the most common form of addressing someone you don't know, or at least whose name you don't know. All right, so I'll just add that here now. A chara. A chara. So, of course, there are various different versions of these. There's a Gaeilge, a Gaeilge. There's various different versions, but basically a chara. So if you don't know someone's name, you need to address them by some form. In English, you might go for sir or ma'am. In Irish, a chara would be sort of the go-to version. You might also hear occasionally cumráide, which of course sounds very similar to comrade in English, and it does. It does have a similar meaning, but may not always have the same connotations as comrade in English, but that is sometimes used as well. Cumráide is sometimes used instead of the word chara if you're referring to like a pal of yours, a cumráide. But usually, to be honest, if you are referring to someone you don't know, you would use a chara instead of a cumráide. a chara. All right, so I hope that's answered all your questions now, Karen. Go to míle maith agat na ceistin ar fad. Thank you very much for all the questions. So now, let's move on to the next one. So the next one now is from Daniel. And Daniel asked, do you have an address for people to communicate with in the Irish language community? And Daniel wants to network with the secular community. So there are lots of communities online, Irish language communities, and on the ground, let's say, as well. There could very possibly be an Irish language group near you, depending on where you live, or at least there could be the occasional pop-up Gaeltacht in a not too far off pub. It all depends on where you are. But there are many online communities, as I said. One you might be interested in is the Irish Language Forum, or the Irish Language Learners Forum, as it's called. And I'll share the address here for the website. So there you go, the irishlanguageforum.com. And there you can get in touch with fellow Irish speakers, and yeah, from very different backgrounds, from all over the world, and you can discuss Irish language matters, and perhaps you can arrange to maybe meet in person, or do language exchange or something of the sort, or practice on Skype or something like that. As I said, to be honest, there are a lot of different places around the world where there are groups, clubs directed towards the Irish language. And so there are a lot. There's lots of Facebook groups. If you just go into Facebook and just search Gaeilge or Irish language, you'll bring up lots of different results. You can get in touch with lots of interesting Irish speakers and Irish learners on Twitter. So yeah, there's lots of different groups online in various different forums for networking. So yeah, so there's lots of them from people of all sorts of backgrounds and interests. And since we're talking about communities, within the Bitesize course, there's Bitesize Pobal, which Pobal means community. And there we have like our own forum for our members. And that way people can get talking to each other and share Irish every day, communicate Gaeilge gach lá, Irish every day. So that's another option as well. So you can, if you go onto our website, bitesize.irish, you can find out more about that. And of course, Daniel, you're always welcome to get in touch with us, and again, and just tell us where you are, and maybe we know of someone close to home who offers maybe immersion courses or something like that, and you can get in touch with them. Martin, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. All right, so the next question then is from John. Now, John lives in Connemara, and he asks, do you have someone there who teaches Connemara Irish? So in Bitesize Irish, not specifically. Not specifically. We, like, Owen has Munster Irish. Myself, I have a mixture. I would say basically Connacht, but it's a mixture, to be honest. I spent it a while in Munster, so there's a mixture. And Gabrielle as well. So Gabrielle is from the Midlands, so she would have a different dialect as well, but you would be, I would imagine, quite used of the Connemara dialect. So we don't have an actual native speaker from Connemara with us in Bitesize Irish, but I'm sure that you could find a local teacher in Connemara. You can get in touch maybe with a local, I would imagine there would be a local community organisation who could easily put you in touch with someone who has experience teaching Irish. But when it comes to the Bitesize Irish course, our course is fairly standard. It's not, we're not going by an Caijan Offigiul exactly, you know, we're not going in, we bring in a mixture. We're open to all dialects because we believe that it's important to understand the different dialects. And it's the same language at the end of the day. So if you know one, you'll basically know the other. Obviously, every dialect has its specific pronunciations, its specific words for different things sometimes. So, of course, there are differences, just like in English, how there's a difference between American English and British English and Australian English. So it's quite similar to that. But if you're studying Irish to a bite size, you'll be well able to branch out and be very specific about the dialect you're learning. So even if you just want to learn one specific dialect, and that's the only dialect you want to speak, that's brilliant. But it's quite good to be knowledgeable of the other dialects as well, because you're going to meet people who speak, let's say, Ulster Irish or Munster Irish. And of course, within Connemara Irish, there are quite a few different dialects within it. As I mentioned earlier there about Quisharige, that's just one region of Connemara. So you go practically from parish to parish in Connemara and you'll hear the differences. Different words are used, different pronunciations and so on and so forth. So I would say that if you want to learn the Irish in your very own area, if you live in a Gaeltacht, as John does in Connemara, I would say get in touch with someone from your village or from your townland practically, because it's just so different depending on each townland even when it's within the Gaeltacht. All right, so I hope that answered your question there, John. And then we have a question from Peter from Hampshire. And Peter says that he's looking for a web link or mobile app for with an Irish language synthesizer. And we mentioned there in our first Q&A that there was one. So you said there that you were thinking of aber.ie, and that's the one we'd recommend, aber.ie. I can't think of any other one other than aber. It's certainly the best. It's quite precise. It's amazing how precise it is even. And I'll just add that up here now. So www.aber.ie. And aber means say. Aber, say. So that's what aber is. Very good. So let's see then. So that's the one. So I would recommend that for sure, Peter. And I would say that's the best. There isn't really much else out there, to be honest. Not that comes to my mind at the moment anyway. That's about it. All right, so good amach Peter. As the kist. All right, so let's move on then to the comments in the chat. All right, so good amach ar fad as a bheith linn. So lom anocht. So thank you all for being with me. It's just myself this evening. So let's go through some of these. All right, so we've got a question here. So I'll just go through some of these. So let's see. Do you understand any Scottish Gaelic? It all depends on the dialect. There are lots of different dialects in Scottish Gaelic. Some of it is very, very similar to Irish Gaelic. And I can understand a good bit of it. But most of it, no. Like most dialects of Scottish Gaelic, I can't understand it when it's being spoken. I can when it's written down, though. Most of it. The thing is, they tend to pronounce their vowels a bit differently from how we do, and you need to get to like tune your ear in. But I've heard that if a fluent Irish speaker goes to Scotland and does, let's say, a week of intensive learning, they'll be able to understand spoken Scots Gaelic after a week, for the most part anyway. So yes and no. If it's written down, I'll get the gist of it, and if in specific dialects I might. But for the most part, no, not spoken. All right. All right. So let's see. So the next one there is, what is your favorite Gaelic song to teach beginner learners? That's a good one now. So I did a bit of a course there, a singing course for Bitesize Irish. So it's within as a part of Bitesize coursey. So if you go on the Bitesize.Irish website, you'll see it. So there's the what would be the best there now? So I did, my memory serves right. I certainly did Trasna dTonnta, and I can write that up. Trasna dTonnta is a nice one. So just let's write this up here now. Trasna dTonnta is a nice song. There's lots of different directional words and vocabulary you can learn from that. So across the waves, that's what Trasna dTonnta means. And we led, or I'll write out all the different notes and things we've discussed this evening, and post it on the blog, on the Bitesize Irish blog, so you can go and find the links there after this if you miss anything during the call. But Trasna dTonnta is one. On Shéamaisín, that's one I think now is very good. On Shéamaisín, it's a particularly good one for learning different verbs. Like on wakatu, did you see? It's a very irregular verb, so it's a good one. You need it. Did you see? It's certainly a common one. So on wakatu, write that one here now. On wakatu Shéamaisín. That's the one I'm talking about. And wakatu Shéamaisín, that's a good one. Another one there would be bhfaca. Bhfaca, it's another nice one for learners. So these ones, they don't have particularly difficult, doesn't have particularly difficult vocabulary, and there's lots of common words that are really useful, and it's very handy for learning pronunciation. What else would we have? Bhfaca and bhían chóir. That's a good one now. Bhían chóir. Again, lots of common vocabulary there. So bhían chóir. Éanach is a fair, so there'll be a fair tomorrow. A fair is in like a type of market, old-fashioned market. So bhían chóir. That's one. All right. So bhían chóir. Anything else? Well, there's a great site, and it's called Songs in Irish. That's what it's called. Songs in Irish. It's a brilliant site. And it has Seanó songs, the uasail songs, but also children's songs. So if you go into the children's song section there, you can listen to different ones, and you can hear what suits your own ability at the moment to learn. So songsiniirish.com, that's what I'd really recommend for learning Irish songs. So it has the lyrics, usually has a translation to English, and it usually also links to various renditions, usually on YouTube. So that's songsiniirish.com. So that was a great question there. That was from D. McShone. Let's see now. I'm afraid I won't sing this evening now. Embarrass myself. So let's see then. All right, so that's a good question here from George Oneill. I heard Irish is a hard language for Americans to learn. I want to know your opinion to see if it was I want to know your opinion if it's easy. I know letters in Irish are pronounced totally different. So yes, I suppose it depends on your experience with learning languages. If you've already, let's say, as many Americans have done, learned Spanish, you would have a good experience, or at least you would have experience there of learning a language that doesn't have the exact same letter structure or anything like that, or sentence structure. So it's that's good. But if you don't know any language other than English, it can be a bit difficult, of course, to learn any language, never mind Irish. So I wouldn't say it's unmanageable. I won't say that it's the most easiest thing on earth. There are a ton of resources today compared to how it was, but especially audio resources. So the thing is, like, when it comes to spelling, you have to get the hang of it, and it's quite a phonetic language, believe it or not. It's just to know how it works. And within the Bitesize Irish course, of course, there's a phonetics, a pronunciation course that breaks that down, how each letter should be pronounced and pairs of letters should be pronounced. So is it easy? I won't say easy. Let's just say it like that. I wouldn't say it's easy. I wouldn't say it's the most difficult language on earth to learn either. But as I said, it depends on your language learning experience. That's a lot of it. Depends on the person. All right. All right. Let's see. Let's see now. What else do we have here? So there's all right. So we've got a question here: how to pronounce caol correctly. So you can hear the difference. Let's see. We were talking there about the website Aber. So there's a difference between ABAR, Aber, and Aber, ABAIR. Now it all depends on the speaker's dialect. So the slender R, or caol R, it's called, can also be, caol means slender. So what that means is an R that has an I or an E before or after it. That's what makes it like that. So it depends. It's not the most important thing. Of course, it's good for bloss, as we call it, for to sound more like an Irish speaker, let's say, or a native Irish speaker. But I suppose it depends on your native accent as well. So it's a little, I would say, like rolling an R, a little bit. So I'll pronounce that word again, one with a broad R and one with a slender R. So Aber, broad R, Aber, slender R. So everyone's different. Some people might criticize my slender R. but everyone's different. Let's see now, what else would have a slender R in it? Richoog, ri. So slightly rolled, kinda. It's difficult to explain. Now the good thing is Owen actually has a video on that. So if you search in YouTube Bitesize Irish slender R, you'll find Owen and his video on that. So got a market health element. Thanks for that question. All right. So this is a great question here about the ismisha. Why is one the sh sound in English and why is the other not? Like is but misha. Why is it the broad s sound in is? So is an exception. Generally speaking, is words with is in them, or si or se or es, would be pronounced like the sh in English, like you have in misha. But is, as it is, let's say, a peculiar word, it's an important part of the grammatical makeup of Irish. Due to that, I would say that's why. So I'm not exactly sure the exact reasons why, but there's probably some historical reason for that, but that's how it is. So is. Now, sometimes people run it together and you have like isay and it turns into she. So I'll write that now. And you can see what I mean by that. So something like this. You might see this. And isay, and some people would pronounce that as she. So that happens as well. But otherwise, if you see is or se or anything like that, you're going to pronounce it like the English sh sound, like in shampoo. And just yesterday, Owen and I did a video on that. I'm not exactly sure if that's live yet, but we're talking about the slender s. So, as I said there, it's basically I before or after the s, e before or after the s. You'll pronounce it with that English sh sound. All right. So let's see if there's any more comments here. Are there churches that deliver Mass in Irish? There are. In Gaeltacht areas mostly, but there are also various, it depends. I think in Dublin there could be ones like once a month or something. I'm not too sure of the specifics, but certainly in Gaeltacht areas, but there are some outside of Gaeltacht areas as well, depending on demand. So I believe there could be one in Dublin that does occasionally. Many churches all over the country would hold a Mass in Irish on St. Patrick's Day. So that's one occasion that you might be easily able to come across a Mass in Irish. But Guramahaga James Shannon. So let's see then. So another one here is how, let's just bring up the next one. That wasn't the one now. Oh yes, so how old? So Ethan here, he speaks Gaeilge but doesn't know how old the language is. So you often hear the number 2,000 years, 2,000 years old. It's difficult to say exactly if you look into it. Like when did the language prior to Irish become Irish? Like we have Old Irish. So Old Irish, I'd say I'd be talking about, I suppose, what year would that be now? I'm going to say 380. I could be wrong. It's certainly almost 2,000 years old. Of course, it has its predecessor, and it's just so far back. It's hard to say. It's quite hard to say. But there was primitive Irish before that again. So the Old Irish, that's classed as like from the 6th century onwards. So like primitive Irish, like how old exactly is that? Like you are talking about, I suppose, the 4th century or so, but it could be earlier. It's very hard to say. So, and there was, of course, this Celtic predecessor. So it's a bit of a hard one. So people just say 2,000 years because it's easy. It's maybe specifically 1,700. But what exactly type? So there's primitive Irish, Old Irish, Middle Irish, and so on and so forth. This is Modern Irish, and Modern Irish has been called Modern Irish for the past few centuries. So yeah, so it's a very old language, that's for sure. It's a very old language. All right. So let's see then. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions here. All right, there's a good question here about the CH. So everyone pronounces their CH like in the Irish word for búchal, a bit different. Some people say búchal, and some people say búchal, much, much softer. So you don't have to really really go into it if it's not for you. You know, you can hear it from native Irish speakers. Some people have a very strong CH, very throaty CH. Some people have a very soft CH. Also depends on the word. So like the word hui, wind, hui, it's practically a H. But búchal, it's more throaty, búchal. So it depends on dialect, depends on the speaker. So some people might say it very, very strongly, others may not. All right. Let's see then. All right. Well, that's correct. Yes. So that's the Old Irish or Primitive Irish. I think they would have called it from 300 to 500 AD. So that's about it. Yeah. So days of St. Patrick. Yes, there would have been Irish in Ireland. And if you go to, let's say, the National Museum in Dublin, you'll see these very, very old artifacts, about 1,500 years old, and you'd see all these engravings and some of them in Irish. And it's fascinating because sometimes it just jumps out. You can see the similarities between the Irish we have today and what they had at that time. So it's fascinating. It's changed so much and so little all at the one time. So it's certainly the same language for practically 2,000 years. It's a nice round off number, but I suppose 1,700 to be very precise. All right. So I guess that's it for this evening. Oh, good Maria. So let's see now. Let's see. And Duke Day said, Boatham Gaeilge Olam, Maho Duke. So I would like to speak Irish, so that's great. And Gunyairi Gugellet. Best of luck in learning Irish. All right. So I suppose we'll might as well wrap it up. So we'll just wrap it up with one last question. So what is joke in Irish? So joke, it has two words basically. There are two words for joke in Irish. You'd often hear scéal grinn. Scéal grinn literally means like a comic story or a funny story. So I'll just write that up here. But there's also the word joke. It's very common as well. So scéal grinn, like a funny story. Scéal grinn. So that's one of the words for joke. One of them. scéal grinn, or as I said, joke. What else would you have? Yeah, that's and I'll write that up as well there. The way it's often spelt in Irish in this new modern spelling with the J. You might see this as well for joke. Okay. So Gurramila Mahagi or Fad. Thank you all for coming along. And if you have any other questions that I didn't get to or anything, you can send them along to us for next time. And hopefully there'll be more than myself here next time. But everyone else had some duties to attend to. So anyway, it was great to have you all to myself tonight. And I wish you all the best of luck in the coming weeks improving your Irish. And it's great that there are so many people with an interest in Irish, both near and far. So you're always welcome, no matter if you want memberships or not. You're always welcome just to send us an email, and we're happy to help out. And anything like that. So comment below or email us at bitesize.irish. So that is info@bitesize.irish. So I'll just share that now. So you can email us there. Go onto the website. There's a contact form there. So just anytime, just send us a line if you have any question about anything, and we'll try and find out the answer for you. Gurramila Mahagi Irish, agus ihua. Good night.